Augustine, Aurelius Augustinus 354 430, Bishop of Hippo, now Annaba, Algeria, is perhaps the most influential philosopher between Aristotle and Aquinas. As a pagan rhetorician, his career took him from his native Carthage in North Africa to Italy, first to Rome and then to Milan. After having been ordered under the spell of the Manichaean religion, he became increasingly dissatisfied with his inability to answer philosophical problems. In 385, he was converted to Christianity and soon identified with a Neoplatonic version of the faith. In 395, he became Bishop of Hippo. His numerous works include On Free Will, from which our first selection is taken, Confessions, from which our second selection is taken, and The City of God, from which our third selection is taken. In On Free Will, the chief ethical problem for Augustine is the problem of evil. What is its definition, source, and effect on human nature, and how is it to be remedied? Implicit in his thinking is Epicurus' puzzle. If God is willing to prevent evil and suffering, but is unable so, then he is not omnipotent, and hence not worthy of worship. If God is able to prevent evil and suffering, but unwilling, then he is not all good and still unworthy of worship. Augustine defines evil as the absence of good. Since existence is good, since it is created by God, evil is the negative element of existence, a privation of existence. It is compared to a disease and wound, absence of health. That cease to exist when the cure comes, for the wound or disease is not a substance, but a defect in the fleshy substance. The source or cause of evil is the will, the falling away from the unchangeable good of a being made good but unchangeable. First, the angel Satan and all his followers fell from the high ideal, and then humanity, led by the first man, Adam, followed after. The angels and Adam were created with a will that permitted a free option between good and evil. They chose the later and thereby limited the choice of all succeeding human beings. The will ceases to adhere to what is above itself, its source, God, and turns to what is lower itself or created objects. It becomes evil not because itself is evil, but because of the improper valuing of things. Evil's power over man leads to ignorance of duty and lusting, libido, after what is hurtful, which in turn lead to error and suffering, which lead to fear. Error also leads to a false evaluation of values and virtues, which alone explains human pride or foolish joy in earthly success and goods. From these basic evils flow all other forms of misery. A just God must punish evil. The answer to Epicurus' puzzle is that free will is a good, necessary for doing good, but as such it can be directed to evil through false valuations created things over the Creator. But it is not God's fault that man sinned and that consequently moral evil exists. But God does intervene and save and elect, so that the fault turns out to be a good thing for the elect, a felix culpa, a happy fault. In our second reading on time and eternity, Augustine reverentially ponders the paradoxes of time. Provided that no one asks me, I know what time is. If I want to explain it, I do not know. Since the past no longer exists and the future is not yet, how can the time be measured? Normally, we can only measure what exists, but only the fleeting present exists. But we cannot measure the present since it is past. as soon as we attempt to measure it. Juxtaposed with temporal extension is God's eternity, which never changes. In our third selection from the City of God, Augustine responds to the charge that Christianity is responsible for the fall of the Roman Empire under Alaric in 412 and develops a Christian political philosophy. That was page 395 and 396 of the philosophy textbook.